First Supercoach NRL video for 2024, obviously just before the new year sets in, and we are in with the team picker there, $11.65 million to use across the 25 players. And yeah, I've had a little play around with all of the potential players of interest at this point for Supercoach NRL in this season coming up. So we're going to go through each and every position, just of guys that I think are people you should target in each of those positions. Some have a little bit more than the others. Obviously, hooker, I only have a few options there. It seems to be a very lean position. Very much the same with the front row forward position as to how you play that one. 2RF has plenty of different guys available. Halves and the 5'8" still fairly low, I think, in potential really good options. Centre wings always fairly solid. You got 11 there I'm going to go through. And then fullbacks are pretty short at that. Obviously, with a few of those guys, you can see the dual player position I've got there afterwards as well. And we won't go into too much detail in this one. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a brief overview of the guys you should be looking at. And if you do want to do the team picker guys for this early round one team, then you need to purchase SC Plus, which I've just done myself, so I can do all of these videos for you guys here. And if you're not interested in doing that as of yet or at all, then you can tune into my videos and be able to help you with all of the potential options that we want to be looking at. So when we go through these potential players, guys, not all of them are going to be guys I am clearly selecting. I just think some of them are interesting. They could potentially have some value at that. And then other guys here are, if they get a certain role, then they could be very, very relevant. There are also other guys in the list of hookers, the list of front row forwards and 2RFs and centre wings and the like that I definitely could have some interest in if it worked out that I had a little bit extra money in the kitty and I could get from a sort of a mid-range guy to a top tier guy. So these are not the only guys that you could plug into your side. These just players I think potentially have a little bit of value coming into this season. So for our hookers, Harry Grant is obviously the clear best guy. You see the average there is 73.5. So you're looking at him. Damien Cook's the next guy on the list in that mid 60s, and I'm not sure if he's, if all of these guys are going to be able to improve on their previous season. Cook, obviously, a couple of years ago in 22 did really well, but he's on the sort of back end of his career now. Harry Grant's still in the peak. If you want the best scorer in the position, if you're happy to spend up the cash at $750K, then Grant will be that guy. Who you pair him with is going to be the other question mark. The other option you could do is go for like a Jeremy Marshall-King, a Reece Robson, who are that little bit cheaper, over 100K cheaper for Jeremy and almost 200K cheaper for Robson, if you think either of those two guys could do well. Jeremy Marshall-King, in games where he wasn't affected by injury, he was able to get a bunch of try assists and do a really good job. So he was up closer to that 70 average at 69 there. And if he's back in action and doing really well, like he was at the beginning of last year with the Dolphins having a pretty solid start to the year, then he's definitely a guy you want to be, you could definitely target in that. They have a bye in round 3 and Storm have a bye in round 4. So that's something to note with those two guys, just making sure that you have a decent backup if you go for one of those guys. Robson doesn't have a bye all the way through until, I believe, round 16, but likely that he plays Origin. So yeah, you get at least the first 12 rounds out of him, and then you can make a decision from there. If he comes out of the blocks and has a little bit of try regression, so back to where he has scored in previous years. Obviously, 2022 was a much better year for the Cowboys, and he was able to score more tries and assist more out of dummy half as well. This past season wasn't as good for them, and his average kind of faltered on that. Brandon Smith, only in the hooker, unfortunately. Don't get there, the front row forward or 2RF positioning there as well. Given he played some 13 the year before, but 46.2 is his average. He's fairly cheap at that at 471. He had lots of stretches last year where he was a 50 plus 60 guy, and then had some injury affected games as well. And first game of the year he got injured, things like that. So he's definitely a guy that has some upside. If you are interested in him, there's a bit of a risk involved with Brandon, but definitely someone to look at for sure. And Jaden Brayley's been given a real solid discount there at 330K. If he gets anywhere close to 60 plus minutes, then he could be an easy guy to slot as your secondary player of a guy that's going to be in that team if he's fit, and no matter what, which is great. So yeah, a lot of people were struggling with having sort of, a Grant and having a Sonny Luke or something like that in that secondary position. Brayley could definitely be the guy to cover that. Other players of note, like Reed Marnie and these types of guys, could come out and have a strong start. Missed tackles are a big worry of his, and concussions, so something to note with Reedy there. And that's kind of the hooker position at the moment of guys we want to be looking at here, because Brayley's a 50+ guy pretty comfortably when he gets good minutes, but we do have to find out some news as to how Phoenix Crossland is going to be used off that bench for him, given he played really well last year. Move to our front row forward there. And Payne Haas, obviously the top guy there at 750k. We have to plug him in to our calculations just because he is a very known great starter. And, when you've got him and Tino at 790k for Tino, he's one of those guys that seems to come home with a wet sail. Like over the last couple of years, Tino's done a cracking job averaging 80 to 90 over that last sort of 8 to 10 rounds. Payne Haas is a really strong starter. So he could be a guy that you plug in all the way through until the start of Origin, and then you could look at moving away from him there. So that's why he's on this list as a, for the front row forward position. It's actually pretty tough in there to find people that I suppose are going to make some value in that mid-range, or even if they're a top tier guy, do they have, is there any reason to pop them in your side? With Haas, with Tino, they're the best in their position. So that's why you want to look at having one of them potentially. But if you don't want to go for those guys, there's potentially some role dependent mid-range front row forwards here. And Ruben Cotter, dual position, 2RF, is very, very helpful. 542k, much cheaper than he was at the beginning of last year. And he had a very strange season, super busy off-season for him. Playing for Australia, he obviously played all of Origin as well in 2022. And then coming into last year, it may have just been a little bit much for him. The minutes weren't there for the Cows. And at 542, you very much doubt that he gets any lower than that. So at worst, in the front row forward position with the dual, he could be a guy that you interchange. And at worst, you get that sort of mid-tier 50s average. And at best, he gets into the 60s and makes you some cash on top of that. So Cotter, very interesting guy with no buys all the way through until he will be out for Origin. Definitely high on my list here as potential front row forward picks, in my opinion. Flegler, 475k there, average of 46.6 last year. Moves to the Dolphins, and the question mark here with Flegs is likely to be the starting side, which would be cool, unless they use sort of Jesse Brom for a little bit, and then Flegs comes on fairly early and he plays 5 or 10 extra minutes. That's what you need from Flegs for him to be worth it to put in your side. If he can get that 5 to 10 minutes, then that's at least a 50+ average, and would then be a nice solid option for the beginning half of the season, and being able to score really well for you as like a consistent guy. And that's really what you need in this front row forward position, is just to not have to change it over very regularly, and that's a position to easily change sort of in round 13 for sure when they get there. So Flegs definitely a solid option in that front row forward. Tavita Totola, 435, 42.7 is the average. Obviously a fairly down year. Had the concussion in game one. Very concussion. Yeah, a lot of issues for him across that season anyway. So he has been a lot more expensive in the past, and for Tavita Totola there, if he can get back to sort of those big minutes, he's probably closer to a 50 guy. So a little bit of value there, but just definitely someone to have on your radar if there's talk that he's going to play really big minutes, and that could be cool. But we do need to find that out across the preseason. Terrell May, I'm super excited about. He was the king of the last month. 6 weeks of footy, obviously with Roosters making the finals as well, and him being a big part of that. The main issue with May is that a lot of time where he got sort of 40 to 50-ish minutes there was when they had one or two of their middle forwards out. So if that becomes the case heading into round one, then he's a guy that you could easily not have in your side. But if there's a few of those guys out, then he's definitely someone that I think is very much worth it as a 50+ kind of guy, very comfortably, with some attacking stats and offloads, and in offloads, and also tackle breaks as well. So Terrell May, keep him on your watch list. Get out of the 400k guys now into the 300s, and that's Liam Knight at 332.8. A bit of a strange one. He's been very open with his past and his issues with drugs and alcohol, and sounds like he's past that. And there's definitely a prop spot available at the Dogs, and he's definitely someone that could take that and could definitely get into the 40s as an average. So look at Liam Knight, see how he fares over the off-season, the pre-season here. He's fighting for some minutes with a few guys. Obviously, Josh Curran comes over. Vili Kikau is available to play on that edge. They lose Corey Waddell So there's some minutes there that could be gone, and really he's fighting for some good minutes with guys like Harrison Edwards and the like there. So Liam Knight, Sam Hughes is on there as well. We may as well talk about him being from the same team. Plenty of chat around him. I'm sure you've heard it all by now if you're watching and listening to podcasts. So yeah, Hughes there, if he can get some decent minutes off the bench, then he could be an easy guy to throw as your cheapie in that front row forward position. Spencer Leniu, 332.4. We just need 5 to 10 more minutes out of him, and then you can see him being a 40 average guy. But in that pack, it's going to be very, very hard to get those big minutes. So I don't see why they would move him into a starting role. I think he's a bench guy. Could be a 35 to 40 minute bench guy. I think they could use him a little bit more, but any more than that, I just don't think they need him to do that. And they've got other guys to play those bigger minute roles. Fletcher Baker at 311. 30 average last year. Again, one of those guys that if he can work his way into that starting side, if he can work his way into a 10-minute more role, then he's a 40-plus guy pretty comfortably, 40 to 45. His PPM's pretty nice, so not one of those guys that I think you have to worry about too much. If, some people you get that extra minutes and they don't actually score that many extra points just based on their, poor PPM of 0.7 or something like that. Baker's just under that 1, so really, really solid for him. Liam Henry, 238, just a few games last year, average of 29. So if he happens to get the Spencer Leniu role, then he could be of interest. So 238 as well, so keep him on your radars. And then Vili Fafita, so 204k, so right at the basement. He is dual position as well. So if he happens to sneak on that Dragons bench, is where he's at, then he could definitely be of interest to any of your sides as well. Let's move to the 2RF now, and it's a position that has obviously got a lot of options here, down all the way down to 19 at this stage with a few cheapies as well. With this position, there's a lot of mid-ranges. So very different to that of front row forward. I think the FRF will be fairly tough to fill well. Like you're probably going to have to take a punt on one of the cheapies as your fourth option. 2RF, I think you can almost fill it with sort of 4 to potentially 5 playing guys. And they're all a lot of them are in that mid-range. You can see a couple of higher tier guys in Katoa, Murray, Papali'i as well. But then it goes down from Dylan Lucas, and there's a lot of guys in that middle that could do a cracking job in your side. So definitely be prepared to have 4 or 5 actual playing guys in your 17, and then potentially 1 cheapie / 2 cheapies on the bench, or a 300k kind of range guy in there as well. So just be prepared for that, as it's definitely a position that has value, and you could end up picking guns in other positions in the center wing. Maybe you go Grant up top, obviously the half, the 5'8", the Browns, the Clearys and the like, and potentially some more game breakers down in that center wing and fullback slot. So have a think about that when you're constructing your side. But Dave Fafita up top, had to incorporate him here, given he has an 81.5 average, very much priced up, coming off a partial pec tear. He's had surgery on that and likely to be there round 1, but probably going to be underdone, to be fair. So it's going to be very hard to take someone coming off an injury at 832k when there's a lot of value in the position. So just wanted to mention him because people will definitely start with him if he's named. Eli Katoa, 656, average of 64. I think he has a lot of room to move with this average up. I don't think he has too much to go down, unless he's got concussions and things like that. So Eli Katoa didn't score many tries at the beginning of last year. He scored a few right at the end, and he scored really, really well. There were games early on where he did pick up some line breaks, so didn't score tries, but picked up the line breaks and the odd try assist there. So with Eli, I definitely think there's some 70s upside, and probably 60 is his floor. So at worst there, you wouldn't lose too much. You're getting a solid score at a 60, but definitely has some try scoring upside, given it's his second year in the 2RF or on the edge there for the Storm. 80 minutes, he's there as an 80-minute guy regularly. I think Trent Liero will be the one to sort of split minutes, if anything, and Ellie, they need that strikeout on the right side. So if Storm can start to improve a little bit more, and they've got Pappy out the back as a bit more of a threat, I think Ellie could end up getting more ball in good position and sort of, with threats out behind him, sweeping around the outside, then Ellie could do well. Cam Murray, obviously a little bit of a down year for him, so he has to be on this list, given there's some bounce back factor there at 639 to 62.5 average on that one. What you're looking at with Cam is, kind of saved a lot of his scores in the back end through tries. A few things were down for him. Offloads were a little bit down. He had some more penalties each of his games. There's just a few things that weren't going exactly his way. A lot of his base stats were still fairly good, but a lot of the attack early on the season was out and about. So Cam Murray, definitely some bounce back factor in him. Not too expensive to find out at 639, so keep him in your thoughts. Isaiah Papali'i, the 568, 55.5 average man. Obviously one of our best 2RFs in the previous couple of years there. Came over to Tigers, great on the right-hand side, not as good on the left-hand side. So if something changes and Bateman ends up in the middle and they play like Blore and then Papali'i plays on the right, then there's definitely a good amount of value in Isaiah if the Tigers can get a little bit better as well, and he can be running off, Aiden Caesar short balls or however they decide to play things out. If he's on the left-hand side and if it's Latu Fainu, if it's Jaden Sullivan, I'm not sure how that's going to go, but on the right-hand side, if we see him there, there's definitely potential for some upside, and I'm sure people will look at him at 568. It's not too expensive for a previous top-tier gun, so definitely keep him in your sights. Dylan Lucas is the interesting one here at 502k, 54.7 the average in his shortened amount of games. He does end up with a little bit of a reduction in his price based on his average because he didn't play as many games. But as a center wing dual as well, he's definitely an easy one to slot into that side if Kai Pearce-Paul isn't close to being fit. I'll be starting with Dylan Lucas. I think he's somewhere around that 55 to sort of 60 range, I think fairly comfortably in a close to 80-minute role. So keep him in your thoughts, either in the 2RF, but likely in the center wing. Siwa Wong, 462 at 45 average for him. So one of those guys that hasn't got really any discount, but if he can get close to that 80 minutes on an edge position there, it's likely going to be Butcher, and then who do they decide? Is it Wong? Is it Crichton? Lots of different decisions to make on that one. So yeah, have a little think. If he gets that starting spot, I think we're all starting with him. If he doesn't, then yeah, we're flicking him, leaving that one through the keeper. Sean Lane, very, very clear, 446, 43.7 the average. Had a shocker year with injuries. We know what his pedigree's like. He's a 60-plus guy, super comfortably. So yeah, if he gets that, he's going to get that edge spot. I think most of us should take him. Shawnee Blore, if he gets an edge as well, he'll definitely come into consideration. If he doesn't, then we'll leave him out. But Blore can be damaging. Just a bit all overshot with minutes with him. He can come out and play close to 80, and then he'd be dropped the next week. So it's a scary one. Brendan Piakura, 426.8, 42 the average. Had games off the bench, had some good minute games on an edge, and in a really good team, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to score tries, make line breaks, and make plenty of points. So if he's in that starting spot come round one, I think most of us will select him as well. It's already 3 or 4 guys where like most of us will be selecting. Josh Curran, again, 421k at 41 average. If he gets a starting lock, if he gets a starting edge, everyone will have him in their side as well. Lock and load. Angus Crichton, 409k. Again, if he gets a starting role, then there's a high chance a lot of people pick him, given he's a top tier second row forward gun in the past as well. So keep him in your sights. Satili Tupanua, I had to add in at 398k, the average of 39. A lot of injuries happening with him. I think he's the lowest on the totem pole in terms of if he gets the starting spot, I'd look to pick him up. If Wong does, if Crichton does, we'll grab him. If Tupanua does, I can't see myself picking him. Kai Pearce-Paul. So we've got Paul and Smithies here at 345k each. Obviously no average given they're both in the Super League. Kai Pearce-Paul coming off, sounds like a pretty bad toe injury. Unlikely to be ready for round one, or won't be fit and ready. So he'll either play a little bit in New South Wales Cup, he'll come straight in off the bench or something like that, would be likely. So hopefully for Dylan Lucas' sake, he isn't around. But it sounds like a 345, you could probably check him out. If he's more expensive, so the 400-500, you'd leave him. But at that price, if he gets to start at some point, he could definitely worth a look in. Could be worth seeing the game or two and then make your decision before the first price rise. But yeah, interesting one here. Kai Pearce-Paul, very damaging ball runner, but wasn't in a lot of the top tier stats over in England there. Smithy's one of those guys that's in the top stats for tackling, so he's very much a defensive guy. Obviously at 345 though, if he can play big minutes, then defensive stats will be enough. The attacking side is what you probably want, where Kai Pearce-Paul is a little bit better on that front. Tallis Duncan, I have some interest in for sure. If he's going to play some decent minutes off the bench, with them losing Hame Sele, they do have Silva Havili, who is likely to get maybe 5 extra minutes or so, given he'll be there for, unless there's an injury, he'll he'll be there on the bench, covering everyone and playing some middle time. Charles Duncan to 321k. Pretty comfortable to be able to use there, I think, in my opinion. And you'd be rolling on from there. So 35 for him. Yeah, gets the minutes there. He's a 45 plus guy. Has some attacking stats in him, which is cool. Kobe Hetherington, 298.6. So with him there, if he gets the role, if he can manage the role there, that would be very, very helpful at the Broncos. He does have a few guys to contend with. Corey Jensen, you got Fletcher Baker, you got Hetherington. There's a few guys there that could come in and take those minutes. We need to find out, I think, in the preseason what's going to be happening with him. Otherwise, I don't think he can take him. Samuela Fainu there, 263 with the Tigers, 32 the average on the edge. Likely to be a middle off the bench. I don't see the interest in him, but I think some people will. If he's named there, knowing his previous average. Jackson, Mr. Howarth there. Jackson, I went to school with the Jackson Howarth. 238k, average of 44 in the one game that he did play. If he happens to get an edge spot as a starter, then we'll grab him. If not, not worth it. Maverick Guy, there's a little bit of chatter around him, looking to get that last bench spot as well. At 204k, not the worst option to throw in at that cheap price and take a free swing. Have a look at him in preseason anyway. Let's move to the halves now. So Nick O'Haines, 470 compared to Nathan Cleary at 912.5k. So that's probably the biggest thing with those two. Cleary got that little bit of a discount because of the injury-affected hamstring game that he had. So Hines probably has the slightly easier draw from a team perspective, but Cleary is Cleary. He's going to score pretty well against most teams there. Doesn't have his, PCL anymore after his heroics in the grand final, but 912k for him. That's probably where a lot of people will go in Cleary over Hines just for the price, and I think that's probably the right way to go. Hines does just seem to score at will, like averaging 95 there. He has, you can also definitely say, and I think this is the case, that the Sharks were pretty clunky for most of the year. Penrith were clunky for about 5 weeks there. So there's so many games there where Hines looked like he could score 100 plus easy, and they just couldn't finish it off, or they got things wrong, or he ended up dropping the ball. So very, very clunky at that, and I think he can definitely average close to 100 for sure, and Cleary could do the same. So either way, you're not going to go wrong. I suppose the question mark is, do you try and fit both of them in, or do you go for one of them and then go for one of these slightly cheaper options here? In Jamal Fogarty at 535k, the main reason you'd be looking at him is a goal-kicking half. Is going to do a lot of the kicking in general play, which can definitely lead to more try assists, controlling things more on his right side. And the main issue I'd see with the Raiders here and him is just that the team is probably not going to be as good as they were last year. Winning a lot of 1 to 12 games, having White in there, making 8th. They could miss the 8 here. Unsure how things are going to look with them for the fullback, how things are going to look at 6. So Fogs there obviously has the role, but how good of a team are they going to be, and how many assists and the like can he end up with? Aiden Caesar with the Tigers at 345 is very, very cheap. The main reason why he's in here is dual position as well with the 5'8", and he's going to be controlling, most likely, this Tigers side, goal kicking as well. So 345k, if the Tigers can do okay, and he can kick some goals, then at a minimum, I think he's going to be a sort of a 450 to 500k guy eventually. So it could be an easy guy to have on your bench. Could cover obviously Hines or Cleary once they have their bye in round 5 and 6. So something to look at there, and an easy guy to loop. We'll use as a loop in that first round between those two positions if that ends up being the way that it works out. Chanel Harris DeVita, 238. So welcome back to him. More just a guy to keep on your radar. If it happens to be an injury to Johnson or anything like that, then he could be the man in the action. And then Ronald Volkman ends up with the Dragons. So if you can look at him getting that 6th position, then potentially some value at 238. But still not great, to be honest with you, even if he does get the position. Scoring wise, he has never been dominant, and you've also got Ben Hunt as the 7. So that's that. 5/8 position, Dylan Brown, 780k, average is 76.5. So there's a lot of talk about him like avenging what happened last year. I had him in Supercoach and I had him in fantasy at the time. It was pretty frustrating, but how much better can he go than 76? So I really think that it's just likely that he does score somewhere around that mark. You have him, you have Munster, you have a few guys like that available in position. I just think Dylan Brown, he's just very consistent, and it's what you want at the beginning of a season too, when you're starting with one of these guys, and you could likely hold him for the entirety of the year if he ends up staying there for the entirety of the year. So that's where you want to look at with Brownie. That's where his value lies, obviously the points, but his availability. hopefully. Jaden Campbell, 456. You can get him at the fullback position as well, so think about that when we get down there. 456k for him. 44.7 is the average. It includes lots of bench games, lots of low minute games. So if he gets a spot at fullback, he's in my side, whether it's 5/8, whether it's in the fullback slot. We'll have to wait and see how things kind of play out with the team picker. But yeah, Jaden Campbell, explosive, attacking player. It's exactly what you want here in Supercoach. Flanagan, not so excited by him at 310, to be honest with you. If he gets the 6 roll, yeah, it's not great. You definitely rather someone slightly more expensive as like an Aiden Caesar. I think it's very, very clear that he'd be the better pick, so that's that. K Weeks, 273. Dual position with the fullback as well. May get the fullback slot, may get 6. We don't know. Doesn't score very well anyway, so he's a bit of a strange one, but the dual position helps. So hopefully we see him improving, but he dominated in the trials last year and that didn't translate to matches. So hopefully a new club for him is better. He can be a bit more of a focal point than he was at Manly, so that's that. Ethan Strange, you get him at centre wing or the 5/8, which is pretty cool. Very cheap at 238. If he gets the 6 spot, everyone will have him either as a centre wing stash or a 5/8 stash, and probably likely a 5/8 stash at this point. Latu Fanu, 204k, so super cheap on that one. If he gets a spot as well, you probably have him in your second 5/8 spot, and you have Ethan Strange in the centre wing, if that was the case, and then you can spend up some cash elsewhere. But he's a running 6. We'll have one of the solid edge back rowers coming off him, and that could be really cool on that left-hand side there. We move to the centre wing. Campbell Graham, someone of interest, along with Isaac Tungo. So both guys that were hampered by injury at certain points last year. Tungo had a bit of a slower start. Campbell Graham went nuts, both averaging 69 and 68.4 on that one. So Graham was a 75 plus guy at the beginning of the season, and then the sternum injury kind of hampered him a bit. So, and the bunnies fell away. So if the bunnies can keep on track, he could be a guy that ends up a top tier keeper that potentially doesn't play Origin. So look at Campbell Graham as one of your starters in the centre wing. Tungo at that same stretch in a really good side. He's a top tier gun. Someone to, just to keep in mind. He was an 85 to 100 guy. Copped some injuries, copped some issues at the back end of the year. Didn't really get to show when he was in super form, which he was. Jacob Kiraz, 605k. Again, there's so many guys in this centre wing position that like a top tier that I just haven't chucked in this video. I just was looking for guys with potentially some value. 605k, 59 is the average for Kiraz. I think I really like him in the centres, and if they can be a better side, he could be a 60. He can get back up to that 65 to 70 range, and would display a little bit of value. So he had some injuries as well last year. If he can be clean, cut, fit, firing, he'll be sweet. Jack Whiten, he's interesting at 52. So if bunnies go really well, he's going to run well. There'll be line breaks, there'll be tackle breaks, there'll be some try assists potentially as well to AJ. I just think it could all work out well, and he can be a 60 guy. So 8 points of value, somewhere there. Seems fair. At 530k, you don't have to spend the world to get him. He's going to be solid enough, consistent enough that, you couldn't really see him getting 20s and 15s like some centers can get. So that's Whiten. Munro, 483. Obviously, price has gone up a little bit. He does carry a discount from his 67.7 average, which is pretty cool. So on that right side, there's a lot of Rabbitohs we're talking about here, but he can be a guy that you slot in that mid-tier. That could do really well and score some tries, and just a really talented kid. So keep looking at him. I really like him. Taylor May, someone I'm really, really keen on. That's way too cheap, I think, for him, given he was a 60-odd guy in 2022. So 458, if he comes back clean, good, fit, and ready to go, then Taylor May is going to be the guy that you slot in, whether it's centre, whether it's wing. Either way is going to be cool. Xavier Savage, 350k. So 49 for him. Dual position with fullback as well. Could be cool. Very, very helpful. If he does get the number 1 role at Raiders, I think we have to select him at 350 to take that punt, because we know what he can do. He can go big, super, super fast, talented guy. So been a weird sort of year and a bit for him, but could definitely be good. Bronson Sherry, 345. I think it's cheap enough to find out if he gets the spot. If he doesn't get the spot, then we'll keep on the lookout. But at this point, just keep him in mind, I suppose, at this stage. Fa'alongo, if he gets it, 83 is his average from one game, which is pretty cool. He has dual position with the fullback slot as well at 339. If Pap's not ready, get him in your sides, basically. Simple as that. Kale Iro, 219.9. Dual position with fullback as well is nice. If he gets the centre role, we'll have him in our side. Just keep him there. Mapapalangi, talk of him potentially getting that wing spot. I just don't see it happening. You got Jenkins there. He's very, very expensive, which is why I haven't mentioned him, but he's likely to get it. He's good enough. Mapapalangi later, I'd say. 5 to go there. Kalen Ponga, 892. So his 87 average includes 5/8 games in there. He was just so incredible at that, the middle to end part of the year when he decided he wasn't going to make Origin. Concussions went away, and he was close to a 100-point scorer, which was just wild. And so he's going to be one of those guys that's a very clear captaincy option. If you want to start with him, compare him with a Reece Walsh, a Latrell Mitchell, something like that, and sort of laugh your way to the points bank, because all the three of these guys here, I think, are the sort of the top tier guys to come. You've got Tommy Trbojevic. I'm just worried about him traveling to Vegas with his hammies, whatever, pec, whatever you want to do with Trbojevic. I just think the other guys are safer for the soft tissue injuries, that of Ponga and Walsh. Ponga won't be traveling, but Walsh will be. Tommy, I'd definitely slot in here as well. You got Tedesco as other options, but yeah, I think these are the three that I'll be looking at personally as pairings. Ponga, obviously the best average. Walshy in an absolutely dominant team. Latrell, we know what he can, bust out at certain parts of the year if he's fit and firing. So those three guys definitely keep in your bank, your memory bank there. Will Price at 345. He's fairly cheap, so if he happens to get a start at some point, he was okay over in England. There's some raps on him, but the stats wise weren't great. So yeah, keep him in mind. And Chevy Stewart, if he ends up at the fullback position for the Raiders, centre wing duel, definitely one of those guys that you want to have a look at. If he gets the start, he's in our centre wing or he's in our fullback, likely to centre wing. But yeah, that's all I've got for you for all of the positions. Obviously, just didn't really speak too much about the centre wing position in terms of their role. And I think there's a lot of options in the more top tier. It could be a bit tough to, hopefully we can get one or two cheapies. But I think centre wing's the other position where you try to get sort of really good scorers in your starting side, and then potentially one you can bench as a scorer as well. And then one or two of the cheaper guys. That could be the play. 5/8 is a little bit tough. Obviously, Dylan Brown, Jaden Campbell, you could slot a few of those in, and maybe one of the starters from Raiders. Halfback seems to be okay. And then the fullback position there. Lots of really good options if you want to pair two guns. If you want to get a mid-ranger, it might be Jaden Campbell. Could be one cheaper guy in there as well. So I think there's going to be enough options this year at fullback. I think there'll be plenty of options overall. Like you see here, I've got sort of 50-odd players that are to target or of interest there, which is really cool. But yeah, that's my sort of players to target video in Supercoach this year. I'm going to be focusing a lot more in my Supercoach content on the head-to-head side of things. I know there's a lot of content creators out there that are talking about overall, so I want to focus a lot on the head-to-head. Obviously, in the preseason, that doesn't change too much. You're looking for value, you're looking for keepers that you can hold all year, and you're looking to save some trades at certain points and potentially save boosts and stuff like that. So we'll get into some strategy around the head-to-head stuff as well as we get a little bit further into this preseason. But I wanted to give you this to kick things off. If you aren't using the Supercoach Plus, obviously you can't get into the team picker, so I thought this would be cool for you. Hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll catch you in the next couple.